You know, it's a strange thing. Human relationships, they're not arbitrary. They're built on patterns, repetitions of behavior, cycles that reflect not only our individual psychology, but also the deeper archetypal narratives we all participate in, often without even realizing it. When a woman leaves a man, especially one she once deeply admired, there's always a story behind it. But what's more fascinating is the pattern that unfolds before she ever returns. And it's not about texting her the right words or chasing her with gestures. It's about something far more profound. It's about transformation. It's about becoming the kind of man who no longer needs her back. And ironically, that's exactly when she feels the gravity pull her toward you again. This speech isn't about cheap tricks. It's not manipulation. It's about understanding the natural order of psychological shifts, about what happens when a man stops bleeding from the wound of abandonment and instead begins to rebuild himself. Because before she ever comes back, you must go somewhere else entirely. You must become someone else entirely. And if you don't understand this, if you don't learn to see this psychological necessity for distance, strength, and sovereignty, then you'll misread the signs and repeat the same painful loops. But if you do understand it, everything changes. Everything. When someone has been present in your life consistently, lovingly, even imperfectly, it's easy to take them for granted. Especially in modern relationships where attention is split, distractions are rampant, and people confuse temporary emotions for permanent truths. One of the most universal yet misunderstood dynamics in this context is the power of absence. And here's the hard truth. She must first experience the absence of your energy to recognize its value. When a woman leaves, often it's not because of a single catastrophic failure. More often it's because a slow erosion has taken place. Maybe she no longer feels emotionally ignited. Maybe you became too available, too predictable, too emotionally dependent. Maybe you began orbiting her instead of being the gravitational center of your own world. And so, somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing the light in your eyes that once fascinated her. She stopped feeling the strength in your silence that once steadied her. The mystery that once pulled her in became a comfort she felt entitled to and then bored of. But once you're gone, truly gone, something begins to shift. Not when you're pretending to be gone, not when you're doing no contact as a tactic, but when you're actually absent in spirit. When your energy is no longer lingering in her inbox, in her social media feed, in her emotional atmosphere. That's when the reckoning begins. You see, people don't just remember the person who left, they remember the feeling that person brought with them. And if you had even a flicker of integrity, passion, emotional weight, she will begin to feel that absence, like the silence after a powerful song ends. It's jarring. It's not just that you're not texting. It's not that you're not calling. It's that the you she once knew has stepped out of the room. And there's nothing filling that space anymore. No man with substance, no emotional replacement, no quick rebound can recreate the precise energetic signature you brought to her life. But this absence must be total. Half measures don't provoke reflection. If you're still checking her stories, responding to her breadcrumbs, or leaving emotional windows open, she never has to feel the cold. And unless she feels the cold, she never truly misses the warmth you once gave. Most men fail here. They remove themselves physically, but remain emotionally entangled, hoping she notices, hoping she regrets. That's not absence. That's emotional limbo, and she can feel it. And it doesn't work. To truly create absence is to withdraw your essence, not to punish, not to manipulate, but because your self-worth demands it, because your presence is valuable, because you're not meant to be on emotional clearance sale. When a man realizes this, when he takes his energy back from a woman who no longer respects it, he stops bleeding emotionally and begins to heal. And ironically, this is the exact moment she starts to wonder, where did he go? Why do I suddenly feel this empty space where he once was? Now, the human psyche is strange. It often fails to appreciate what's constantly present, but obsesses over what it has lost. This isn't just romantic theory, it's psychological truth. Scarcity triggers value perception, and a woman who once viewed you as too available will begin to feel anxiety in your absence. But again, this only happens if your absence is real. If you're busy becoming better, not bitter. If you're creating distance not out of pettiness, but out of purpose. There's no timeline for when she begins to feel it. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes months, sometimes years. But if your presence had substance, the silence you leave behind will echo, and that echo will haunt her. Not because you're trying to haunt her, but because she will begin to remember the man who brought her peace, challenge, desire, protection, mystery. All the things she dismissed as ordinary while she had them. And when that echo grows loud enough, when the absence becomes more oppressive than the arguments ever were, that's when she'll think about returning. But by then, you may have become so full in your own path, so grounded in your absence, that her return no longer dictates your value. You'll see it clearly for what it is. Not validation, but recognition. But none of that can happen unless she first feels what it's like to live without you. Not just without your body, but without your essence. And that only happens when you withdraw your energy completely. With dignity, without announcement, without bitterness. Just silence. Complete and clean. Because only in that silence can she finally hear the value of your voice. When a man is left by a woman he deeply cared for, his instinct is often to fix, to chase, to explain, to restore the connection before it disappears completely. This response comes from a place of emotional urgency, from the deep wound of rejection, from the psychological fear of abandonment that grips so many. But here's what almost every man must painfully learn through experience. Her return is preceded by your detachment, not your pursuit. Chasing her might feel like the right thing. It might feel noble, romantic, even courageous. You're taught by movies and music that grand gestures win her back, that if you just say the right thing or prove your love enough, she'll change your mind. But real life isn't a script. It's a battlefield of value, identity, and power. And in this field, chasing only depletes you and confirms her decision to leave. Why? Because pursuit reinforces the dynamic that caused the loss of attraction in the first place. If she walked away because she no longer respected the man you were becoming, too soft, too dependent, too reactive, then pursuing her only highlights those very traits. You're not showing strength, you're not winning her over, you're reinforcing her belief that leaving was the right move, that you needed her more than you needed your self-respect. Detachment, on the other hand, changes everything. It interrupts the pattern. It's not about pretending to move on. It's about actually withdrawing your emotional investment, not in bitterness, not to punish her, but because your value no longer lies in convincing someone to stay. True detachment is not apathy. It's clarity. It's knowing that your life doesn't revolve around another person's presence or absence. It's realizing that your sense of worth doesn't hinge on whether someone loves you today or leaves you tomorrow. When you detach, you're no longer operating from a place of need. And a man who doesn't need commands attention in a way that a desperate man never can. Your energy shifts. Your words become fewer but heavier. Your silence begins to speak louder than your pleas ever did. And this shift doesn't go unnoticed. She will feel it. She'll sense that something is different, that the emotional thread she once took for granted has been cut, that the man who used to be waiting, checking, hoping, messaging has gone dark. And the silence won't just confuse her, it will challenge her, because she expected you to chase. She expected you to crumble. But instead, you vanished into your own world, into your discipline, your self-respect, your growth. And that detachment does something to her subconscious. It introduces doubt. Doubt about whether she made the right decision. Doubt about whether she truly understood your value. Doubt about whether she lost something more significant than she thought. You see, people are drawn to what they cannot fully possess. When you were pursuing, you made yourself emotionally accessible. There was no mystery, no scarcity, no tension. But when you detach, you reintroduce polarity into the dynamic. You become a man on a mission. A man whose value is defined by his principles, not by someone else's presence. This isn't a game. It's not reverse psychology. It's simply the nature of human attraction. Women do not return to men who begged. They return to men who transcended the pain of rejection and became better because of it. They return when the emotional tides shift, not because you asked them to, but because your absence created a vacuum they could no longer ignore. But detachment must be clean. No mixed signals, no hidden agendas, no cryptic posts or subtle jabs. True detachment is invisible. It's silent. It's dignified. It doesn't try to be seen. It is seen because of its weight. And in that detachment, you gain something far more important than her attention. You regain yourself. You begin to rebuild not for her to notice, but because you deserve the man you're becoming. And when that foundation becomes solid, when you are no longer the man she left, the irony unfolds. She may begin to feel drawn back, pulled by the very strength that was absent before. But this doesn't mean you wait for her. Detachment is not a strategy to get her back. It's a requirement to move forward. And if she does come back, you'll know it's not because you chased her. It's because you stopped, because you grew, because you detached from the outcome and became the kind of man who no longer seeks permission to be worthy. And that man, he doesn't chase love. He attracts it. When a woman walks away, it often sends a man spiraling into self-doubt. He starts questioning his worth, his actions, his identity. He may become obsessed with what went wrong, trying to decipher each conversation, each moment, wondering how he could have changed the outcome. But this obsessive reflection leads nowhere unless it gives birth to something deeper, transformation. Because what brings her back is not your begging or your brokenness, it's your transformation into a man of discipline, not desperation, that triggers her reflection. Desperation is repelling. It signals lack of direction, lack of self-worth, lack of control. A desperate man doesn't command respect, he surrenders it. He floods her with texts, shows up uninvited, stalks her social media, performs emotional theatrics to get attention, but none of that inspires attraction. It reinforces her decision to leave. Desperation tells her that you don't trust yourself to move forward, that you've made her the center of your identity, that without her you're lost. But discipline tells a different story entirely. A disciplined man does not collapse under emotional pressure. He grieves, but he does not beg. He hurts, but he uses that pain as fuel. He doesn't numb himself with distractions or chase cheap validation. He sharpens himself in silence. His routine becomes sacred. His mind becomes clear. His actions become intentional. He rises early. He trains his body. He feeds his soul. And he builds the version of himself that he was always meant to be, but never became while he was emotionally dependent on someone else. This transformation is not about impressing her. It's not a theatrical display to lure her back. It's not, look what you lost. That's still rooted in insecurity. No. This is about becoming someone who no longer needs external validation to feel powerful. It's about forging an identity rooted in purpose, not proximity to her affection. And here's the paradox. When you stop being desperate for her return, that's when she starts to feel the shift. She doesn't feel your absence as an emotional void anymore. She feels it as a force, a gravitational pull that wasn't there before. Because now you're not sitting in your pain, you've transcended it. You've become someone who radiates quiet confidence, calm strength, and earned wisdom. And this transformation doesn't go unnoticed. Whether she sees it online or hears about it through mutual friends, whether she watches you from a distance or runs into you unexpectedly, she will see it. And more importantly, she will feel it. Because a man of discipline carries a different kind of presence. He speaks less, but his words carry weight. He doesn't need attention, but he draws it effortlessly. He doesn't need her approval, and that's precisely what makes her curious again. She begins to wonder, what happened to him? How did he change so fast? Why does he seem so at peace without me? But make no mistake, this transformation is not about her. It's about you. It's about rising from the ashes of emotional collapse and choosing to rebuild not what you had with her, but what you lost within yourself. Discipline rewires your brain. It returns power to your hands. It turns pain into momentum and rejection into clarity. And if she ever comes back, it won't be because you chased her. It'll be because you outgrew the version of yourself that once needed her to feel whole. She'll return because the man she left behind no longer exists. And the man who stands in his place is no longer willing to lower himself for temporary affection. And here's the truth she'll have to face. She left when you were soft, uncertain, emotionally entangled. She returns when you've become decisive, directed, and emotionally grounded. And by that time, it's not even about whether you take her back. It's about whether she even belongs in the new life you've created. Discipline changes everything. It's the sharp line between a man who suffers endlessly after heartbreak and a man who uses that suffering as the catalyst for reinvention. One stays in victimhood, the other rises in power. And power doesn't come from revenge, it comes from refinement. So if you want her to feel the weight of losing you, don't scream, don't chase, don't explain, build. Every rep, every early morning, every decision you make in silence is a declaration that your life is moving forward with or without her. And ironically, that's exactly when the past begins to chase the future. When a woman walks away from a relationship, she doesn't immediately disappear emotionally. In fact, many times, even if she's physically gone, she's still observing quietly, passively, almost invisibly. She doesn't always slam the door shut. She often leaves it slightly open, just enough to peek through. This is something most men don't realize in the aftermath. They think it's over. They think she's moved on. They think she's forgotten everything. But that's not always true. She watches silently as you rebuild, waiting for signs of your independence. This isn't about ego. It's about instinct. When a woman walks away, especially from a man she once cared for deeply, she doesn't immediately erase him from her psyche. There's still a part of her that's emotionally invested. Even if she tells herself she's done, but she needs to justify her decision to leave. And to do that, she waits to see what you do with your pain. Will you fall apart? Will you chase her endlessly? Will you validate her belief that walking away was the right move? She won't tell you she's watching. She won't text you, hey, I want to see if you're becoming the man I always hoped you would be. She won't ask about your progress directly. She'll watch through stories, mutual friends, online presence, or even silence. But she's paying attention, not to your words, but your transformation. Not to what you say, but what you become. Here's what she's trying to see. Are you still orbiting around her emotionally? Or have you started revolving around your own mission again? If she sees you still seeking her validation, liking her photos, sending her messages, dropping cryptic hints, then in her mind, you haven't changed. You're still stuck in the same emotional place. And in that case, her ego is satisfied. She was right to leave. You're still emotionally tethered to her. But if she watches and sees something else, something unexpected, it begins to disrupt that narrative. She sees you in the gym, not for attention, but for growth. She sees you focused, productive, silent. She sees that you're no longer performing for her eyes, that your life is no longer a stage where she's the intended audience. And that shakes her because the emotional power has shifted. not through manipulation, but through evolution. You're not doing it to win her back. You're doing it because the man she left behind was not the man you wanted to remain. And that change, when it's real, is unmistakable. It radiates in your posture, your eyes, your silence. And it sends a message that echoes louder than any words ever could. I don't need you to become who I am becoming. And that's the very moment when curiosity is born in her again. Not because she misses the old version of you, but because she never expected you to become more powerful in her absence. She expected you to wait, to reach out, to decline, and when you didn't, it quietly challenged everything she believed about your dynamic. She starts to wonder if maybe she misjudged you, if maybe she left right before you became who you were always meant to be. But here's where most men sabotage themselves. They sense her watching, and they perform. They post for her, train for her, move forward for her, but that's not real independence. That's just disguised desperation, and she can feel that too. Women are emotionally intuitive. They know when your success is sincere and when it's being used as bait. True rebuilding isn't theatrical. It's sacred. It happens behind closed doors when no one is watching. When the world is asleep and you're up grinding, healing, evolving. That kind of transformation can't be faked. And when she sees even a glimpse of it, when she senses that you're truly rebuilding from the inside out, her perception shifts, but she won't admit it immediately. She won't congratulate you. She might even stay silent. That's okay, because the goal was never her applause. The goal was you becoming a man who no longer needs it. And ironically, that's the kind of man who makes her question leaving in the first place. So rebuild quietly, relentlessly, not to be watched, but because you've finally seen yourself. And if she's watching, let her witness the resurrection of a man who didn't just survive heartbreak, but turned it into his rebirth. When a man is broken after heartbreak, his first instinct is often to search for a way to restore what was lost. He holds on to memories, replays conversations, and waits, hoping that she'll come back, that the connection will magically reappear. He might tell himself, if I just wait long enough, stay loyal, prove my love, she'll see it and return. But this waiting becomes a prison, not a plan. Because here's the truth, most men refuse to accept. Only when you stop needing her does she feel the pull to return. Neediness is invisible to the man feeling it, but unmistakable to the woman sensing it. It's a silent signal that repels more than it attracts. And it's not just about words or actions, it's an energetic truth. When your identity is still tied to her, when your emotional stability rises and falls based on her presence or absence, she can feel it, even from a distance, and that keeps her away. Not out of cruelty, but because attraction cannot grow in a space filled with emotional dependency. You have to understand, when you need her, you place her on a pedestal above yourself. You make her your source of meaning, of validation, of emotional fuel. And no one, no woman wants to be the center of a man's identity. It's too heavy, too unbalanced, too suffocating. It doesn't inspire love. It provokes discomfort, because the more you need her, the more she feels the pressure to carry your emotional weight, and that pressure pushes her further away. But the moment that need disappears, when you genuinely release her from the grip of your longing, everything shifts. Letting go isn't pretending. It's not fake confidence or loud declarations that you've moved on. That's just another form of performance, and she'll see right through it. Letting go is internal, quiet. It's the deep, grounded realization that your life is meaningful with or without her, that your value isn't waiting for someone else to validate it, that your journey continues forward, not because she's watching, but because you've chosen to live fully. And here's where the irony lives. Once that emotional cord is severed, not out of bitterness, but from truth. That's when she feels it. She doesn't feel it when you're chasing. She doesn't feel it when you're hoping. She feels it when you no longer need her to return. That's when she starts to wonder if she misjudged your strength. That's when the silence you left behind becomes louder than the words you once poured out. She begins to remember not just what you gave her, but who you were before you needed her. And that man, the one who had direction, presence, confidence, purpose, that's the man she felt drawn to. Not the version of you who begged, pleaded, waited endlessly at the door of hope, but the man who closed that door, not in anger, but in clarity. You see, emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing. You can still have love in your heart. You can still remember the good moments, but you no longer shape your identity around her presence. You no longer act as if her return will complete you. This shift in you does more than just attract her. It transforms your entire life. You become magnetic to more than just her. Opportunities open, new people arrive. Your energy becomes stable, directed, grounded. You're no longer pulled by the tides of emotion. You move with intention. And that kind of man, the man who has mastered his neediness, becomes rare, valuable, powerful. If she returns, it won't be because you sat around hoping. It'll be because she sensed that something precious was no longer available to her, that she walked away from a man who found a way to stand taller without her. And she'll feel that absence not as a void, but as a loss. But by then, the power lies in your hands, because now you get to choose. Do you want her back, not from desperation, but from wisdom? Or do you keep walking forward, knowing that you became something greater in her absence? Only when you stop needing her does she start needing you. But by that time, you may have already discovered something far more important than her return, your own rebirth. So here we are, at the end of the path where heartbreak began and transformation took root. If there's one truth every man must grasp, it's this: she doesn't come back because you chase her. She doesn't return because you cry louder, wait longer, or explain deeper. She comes back when you become the man who no longer needs her to return. Pain is the catalyst, yes, but discipline is the forge. Detachment is the sharpening stone. Silence is the space where your strength is reborn. And the man who emerges from that darkness is not the same man she walked away from. He doesn't beg, he doesn't perform, he builds in private, with purpose, without apology. Let her watch, let her wonder, let her see what you've become, not because you need her to, but because you needed you all along. Your self-respect is not a tool for revenge. It's the foundation of your resurrection. And if she circles back, moved by your transformation, let that be a reflection of your growth, not the goal of it. Because the truth is this: the man who stops chasing starts choosing. And when you finally stop needing her, you might realize you were never missing her at all. You were missing yourself. And now, you're home.